Something has already happened. You've been through something, maybe a long time ago, maybe recently, that changed what was available to you, what you could go back to, what you could still become. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a question arrived. Not loudly, not as a question exactly, more like a weight shifting, the way a load adjusts when you've been carrying it so long that even its movement feels unfamiliar. If the old version is gone, what remains? Nietzsche had an answer. Not a comfortable one, not a straight line from loss to recovery. He described three changes, three things the spirit must become before it can create. The camel, the lion, the child. Not a sequence you complete, a movement you're already inside. You've been carrying the camel's load your whole life. Some of it you chose, most of it you didn't. This is about the part you didn't. We are not going to walk you through a transformation. Transformation is not what this is. What we're going to do is look at the weight, the specific weight you've been carrying since before you were old enough to decide whether to carry it, and then the moment you put it down, and then the silence after, and then the thing that was there before the weight arrived, and has been there ever since, not waiting to be rescued, not diminished by the time it spent under everything else, still doing exactly what it does, still there, waiting for exactly this. The weight you inherited, Part 1, the camel. The camel kneels. It doesn't resist. It doesn't evaluate the load. It simply lowers itself and accepts the weight because that is what it was built to do. You know this feeling, the version of success that was already decided before you were old enough to decide. The way of being in the world that was handed to you so early that it felt like your own idea. The expectations that arrived before you had expectations of your own. You carried them, efficiently, without complaint. Because that's what you do when a load arrives early enough. You forget it arrived at all. You think it grew there. You think it's you. And for a long time, the distinction didn't matter. The load was manageable. The load felt like direction until the ground shifted and the load kept its shape, and you started to wonder which parts were load and which parts were you. Here is the question nobody asks until something forces them to. Which parts of this did I choose? Not in theory, specifically. The ambition, yours or inherited. The definition of a good life, yours or borrowed. The version of yourself you present to people who matter, built from your own material or assembled from what the room required. Most people never ask. Not because they're incurious, because the load arrives so early that asking feels like questioning the ground beneath your feet. And the ground was stable. For a long time, the ground was stable. The load was manageable. The direction was clear. But the ground shifted. You already know it shifted. That's why you're here. And now the load feels different. Not heavier, just less obviously yours. Just slightly less like something you chose, and slightly more like something that was there when you arrived. Not yet. Part 2, the lion. The lion doesn't carry the load. The lion says no, not gently, not with explanation, not with the careful social management of someone who needs the room to stay warm. The lion encounters the great dragon, the dragon whose scales are made of every law you didn't write but have been obeying, every value you inherited but never tested, every thou shalt that arrived before you had a self to shout with. And the lion says, I will not. You felt this. The moment a no arrived in you that wasn't polite, that didn't apologize, that simply refused. But here is what Nietzsche says next. And this is the part that most readings miss. The lion cannot create. It can destroy what was false. It can refuse what was inherited. It can clear the ground, but it cannot build, because the lion's power is the power of no. And creation requires something else entirely, something the lion, by its very nature, cannot provide. After the refusal comes the silence, the specific silence of someone who has just said no to the thing they've been saying yes to for most of their life, and there is nothing yet to replace it with. Just the open space where the load used to be. That space is not a failure. It's not emptiness in the negative sense. It's the condition, the only condition under which the next thing can arrive. Most people cannot stay in that silence. It feels like failure, like the no was wrong, like maybe the load was yours after all, and you were foolish to put it down. So they pick it back up, or find a new load that looks different but weighs the same, a new version of the same expectation, a new crowd to perform for, a new definition of success that still belongs to someone else. The lion's work is not comfortable. It was never meant to be. The silence after the refusal is not the absence of something. It's the condition for what comes next. But you have to stay in it long enough for the next thing to arrive. And the next thing doesn't arrive on schedule. It arrives when the space is ready, when you've stopped trying to fill it with something familiar. Not behind you, ahead. Part 3, the child. The child is not who you were. This is the misreading. The child is not the version of you before the weight arrived, not innocence, not naivety, not the self before it knew things. The child is a capacity, the capacity to begin, to create without permission, to say yes to something because the yes comes from inside rather than from the crowd. The child plays. Not because play is trivial, because play is the only activity where the doing is the point, not the outcome, not the approval, not the result, the motion itself. Nietzsche called it a holy yes saying, not the yes of compliance, not the yes of someone who has been asked and finds it easier to agree. The yes that comes before the question, the yes that moves without consulting the crowd. This is not the same as confidence. Confidence still cares whether it's right. This is something older. The part of you that drew on walls before you knew that walls were for other things, that sang before you knew singing was something people judged, that wanted things directly before you learned to want what you were supposed to want. That part didn't leave. It went quiet, under the weight, under the performance, under the distance you kept between yourself and everything that might have reached you, but it didn't leave. Quiet is not the same as gone. The child was never behind you. You've been thinking of it as something in the past, something you had before the weight arrived, before the performance began, before the glass went up. But the child is not a memory. The child is the thing that was there before the weight and is still there underneath it, not waiting to be rescued, not damaged, not diminished, still doing exactly what it does, saying yes, creating, moving toward things because they matter, not because they will be received well. You felt it in the moments when you forgot to perform, in the work that surprised you, in the yes that came before you could stop it, in the conversation that went somewhere you didn't plan, in the idea that arrived before you had time to ask whether it was good enough. That was the child. It never went anywhere. It just had less room. The camel carried what was given. The lion refused what was false. The child creates what is next. These are not stages you complete and leave behind. They are all present, right now, in you. The camel is the weight you're still carrying that isn't yours. The lion is every refusal that changed your direction. The child is the yes that's been waiting in the silence after the no. The question is not which one you are. The question is which one you're listening to. You've been through the descent. You've stopped performing for the crowd. You've felt the silence after putting down what wasn't yours. The child was there through all of it. Not as a destination, not as a reward, not as evidence that you did it right. As the thing that remained when everything else was examined, refused, or released. It was there in the glass wall, in the moment before you pulled back. It was there in the descent, in the version of you standing outside the familiar room. It was there in the silence after the lion's refusal, waiting for the space to clear. It doesn't ask you to find it. It's already where you left it, which is the same place it's always been, underneath everything, doing exactly what it does. The child is still there. You already know where.